Good evening and welcome to Nobody Asked Me Guys Show. Guys, I'm your host, Melvin Casey Lars, and as always, you know how we do it here. We don't waste your time with cookie cutter questions and pontificating about things that doesn't matter. This evening, we'll be having a very serious conversation with Mr. Henry Whitehorn. I call him Sheriff Whitehorn. Anytime you win an election and people go back twice and they still lose, and then now you have to come back and do it again. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just telling my audience, you know how I am. So we have with us this evening Mr. Henry Whitehorn Sr., and also will be co-hosting with me is Dr. Latienda Pierre, and he'll be talking about some things as far as the sheriff race and the importance of it, and Dr. Pierre will do some follow-up things as well. And all of us understand very clearly how important it is to get out and vote, and all of us understand clearly, as you can see in the background, people love to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, and they seem to forget that he lost his life because he was out fighting for the rights for people to vote, etc. So we do not want to insult him by not doing that. So without further ado, we want to welcome Mr. Henry Whitehorn Sr. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing great, Melvin, and thank you for inviting me on your show.
Well, listen, it's certainly a pleasure, and we certainly respect the fact that you've agreed to be here. We have, and I'm happy to say, we have a really nice audience, and we have a lot of young people as well. And one good thing, they're all voting age, so they can vote. But listen, we would like, as I said earlier, if we would like to just share briefly with our audience a quick screen share so that they'll know that they can go. We're not going to do a lot of, we're not going to do any reading, quite frankly, but I just want them to see the screen share so that they'll know to go to theirs and look up Meet Whitehorn, and then they'll know to make sure that they know the person. They can see all the things that you've done and the things they've been to. So I want to make sure that we do this screen and keep moving. 'Cause again, I know he's going to share with us. So Sheriff Whitehorn, if you will, if you just give us a tidbit about who you are and what you do and what your expectations are, sir.
Thank you, Melvin. My name is Henry Whitehorn. As everybody know, I've been in law enforcement for the last 40 plus years. I have over 4 decades of law enforcement experience, 49 years of public service. I'm also an Air Force veteran, United States Air Force veteran. And this race has really galvanized this community here in Caddo Parish. I think folks understand now the importance of this one vote and how important your voices are. As Melvin said, Dr. King gave his life so that we could have this right. But not only Dr. King, men and women of all races in this country fought for this right. And so it's critical that we try to help folks understand how important it is. As I said, 40 years of law enforcement. I served as the superintendent of the Louisiana State Police. I served as the Deputy Secretary of Public Safety Services for the state of Louisiana. I've served as Chief of Police for the city of Shreveport. I was appointed by President Barack Obama as the United States Marshal for the Western District of Louisiana, where I retired after 10 years. I also served as I mentioned Chief of Police for the city of Shreveport, but also the Chief Administrative Officer for the city of Shreveport. So I have lots of experience in administration and in law enforcement that I bring to the table for this particular position. I've worked with the law enforcement community all over this country. I'm a lifetime member of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. I'm a lifetime member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police and graduate of the FBI Academy, the National Executive Institute, and completed coursework at Harvard University, Kennedy School of Government.
Sheriff Whitehorn, as I said, please forgive me when I'm going to call you Sheriff Whitehorn. I am just really baffled, to be quite honest with you. I know there's a lot of politics involved, and I when I read these headlines, about debating and not going to debate it. I mean, my question, if you don't mind, what in the world would we debate? My, I think about, and I'll be brief with this. Having been a high school athlete, college athlete, professional athlete, inside NFL locker rooms and things like that. I mean, what would I debate with someone that says, I want to talk about what happens in the NFL locker room because I've talked to a lot of NFL players and I'm the best person to represent the conversation. What would you say to a question like that?
Yeah, well, remember we did all the debates on the first round. We went to town hall after town hall. We had forum after forum. We did debates on live television. There's nothing else to talk about. Folks have heard our record. They know that my experience level versus my opponent's experience level. I don't know what else it is to talk about. Right now, our issue is we need to get out and vote and go ahead and finish this election and put the best man in office. This is not about Henry Whitehorn anymore. This is about what's right for the citizens of Caddo Parish and making sure that we have the person in office that knows how to do the job and can get the job done. A lot of times, when we look at law enforcement, people, the trust in law enforcement is not what it used to be, certainly. And so we're talking about putting a man in office that has zero experience in law enforcement in the top law enforcement position in the parish. And it just doesn't make sense. And I'll be honest with you, I don't believe we would be in this situation if the shoe was on the other foot.
Absolutely not. Now we have some guests with us, and I want our guests to feel free to ask any questions or share anything as I open the show. Sheriff Whitehorn is pressed for time, and if you will, you have any specific questions, if you'll please share them at this time. I know you're there because we've chimed you in already. Okay, well, I tell you what, Sheriff Whitehorn.
I see one hand, Miss Carey.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Carey. I can't see you on my screen. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I consider it a privilege to be part of this. My name is Carrie Haver, and I am the health chair of the Muskegon branch NAACP, and quite interested in this situation here. But I'd like to hear a little more about what's going on. You said they're putting someone else in or trying to vote on another individual. Can you explain that just a little bit for me?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Carey, we started this race with, I believe, 6 candidates. And it came down to a runoff between myself and another opponent. My opponent is an attorney. He served 1 term on our city council, and he's been an attorney for approximately 20 years, he said. Mainly, from what I know about him, is defense law in federal court. No law enforcement experience. I have over 40 years of law enforcement experience. I've led multiple agencies with employees upward of 3,000. Major organizations like the Louisiana State Police, the U.S. Marshal Service. I served as chief of police. I've served as the Deputy Secretary for Public Safety for the entire state of Louisiana. I've served as the CEO for the city of Shreveport. So I've not only have the executive law enforcement experience, but I also have the executive administrative experience. My opponent, to my knowledge, hasn't supervised anybody except maybe a couple of people in an office. He's never led anything. He served 1 term on the council and said that he was going to not run again because he wants to spend more time with his family. And that's about all I know about the gentleman. I did work with him when I was CAO and he served on the council. We had a few conflicts, but nothing major. In fact, I kind of like the guy. But this is not about liking. This is about who can best serve the citizens of Caddo Parish. And I've told folks over and over again that I believe if the shoe was on the other foot, if he had all the experience and I came in as an attorney, folks would say I was crazy to try to compete against this man. And so I'm just baffled as to how all of a sudden we can say that experience doesn't matter. Go fill out a job application somewhere. And one of the questions or several of the questions is going to be list your experience. What have you done? Most job descriptions have qualifications that require a certain level of experience to even qualify for a job. And so now we want to tell our children, after we've told them to go get your education, go prepare yourself, get some start at the bottom, work your way up, get that experience so that you can, support your family later. And now we're going to tell them your experience doesn't matter. That's the part that gets me. And, I've proven my experience. I led the state police during Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, some of the worst natural disasters in this country. I was in charge of all the law enforcement operation for those disasters. I've led through a pandemic. I've reduced crime to its lowest level in 30 years in the city of Shreveport when I was chief of police. Reduced homicides by 54%. My record is clear that I can get the job done. The individual I'm running against doesn't have a record. But because he doesn't look like me, it's okay. That's what gets me. This is about what's best for the citizens of Caddo Parish. We're in a violent crime crisis across this country. And we want to say that the chief law enforcement position in the parish is not a law enforcement position. In fact, the incumbent said that it was more like being running a business. The sheriff is like running a business. I can understand that. He said it's more like being a CAO for the city. Well, I'm the only one in the race that's been a CAO and led a major organization. So tell me why he's more qualified than I am. They can't do it.
Is it my understanding, Brother Whitehorn, you said a runoff, so there was a tie?
I won the election by 1 vote.
Okay, you have it by 1 vote, but they want to do a runoff.
No, ma'am. We did a recount. He asked for a recount. So we did a recount, a hand recount. I won again by 1 vote. Then he went to court to have the election thrown out because they said there were some irregularities, that 2 people voted twice in the election, and that folks that were now deceased had voted in the election, and that a lot of the mail-in ballots were not properly signed and witnessed and so forth and so on. And so we went to court. District court agreed with him that the election should be overturned. The 2 people that voted twice were Republicans that held leadership positions in the Republican Party. So those were not my votes. The people that were deceased at the time of the election were alive when they put their ballots in the mail. It's just unfortunate that sometimes, people are sick and they don't make it. And in fact, I talked to one of the daughters of one of the deceased individuals. And she said, I've been trying to reach you for the last 3 months. She said, this is personal for me because I mailed my mother's ballot and she was alive and she knew who she was voting for. And so it's just the misleading information that's out there. And so we went to Second Circuit Court of Appeals for the state of Louisiana for this area. And they upheld the lower court. Our Louisiana Supreme Court refused to hear the case. And so that required that a new election be held, and that is what we're going to now. So I won the election twice. It was certified by the Secretary of State. Certified by the Secretary of State that I won the election, but the courts threw it out. And so now we're into a special election for March 23rd.
But I sympathize with you, Brother Whitehorn. But my next question, if I could, is a two-part question. And it's to you.
Go right ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
It is to you, Brother Whitehorn, and to Mr. Lars. Number one, with what we've heard thus far, why has there not been any mention of the NAACP? The NAACP plays a major role in these things. I believe even with the runoff, when that happened, there should have been a complaint. The NAACP is alive and well because of things like this. And I say this, Brother Whitehorn, that it would behoove you to take that step. And I've noticed that you've been a part of a number of other organizations, but the NAACP is here for a reason. The NAACP is relevant today because of what's going on right here now. Just it's happening to you at this point, but it's happening all over. We are still dealing with a lot of things our forefathers have dealt with, and we know this. We know this. And Brother Lars, as a former president of a branch, I would think that, and you know I have much respect for you, I would think that would be an avenue that you could have, I guess, counseled with them, because the branch has an obligation, once the complaint is filed, to look into these things. And especially, I heard that 2 of the former voters were deceased at this point. People can say a lot of different things, but facts are facts. And if the votes were recounted and he still won by 1 vote, what about those rights? You have a man that's unqualified, that's running for office. And you have this guy over here that has enough qualifications for 2 or 3 different people. We're still dealing with this. And diversity does matter. And I do believe that the local NAACP should take a complaint. This should be made known throughout the county, throughout the state, as to what's going on here. Everyone does not feel that way, and everyone is not going to sit there and be quiet about it.
Yeah, Ms.
That
Carey.
cannot happen. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Carey, we are working with our local chapter, NAACP,
okay,
here. And this election has actually gone national. The National Democratic Party has soldiers on foot soldiers on the ground here. I met with Dr. Alexia Mays. She's a contractor with the National Democratic Party. And one of the things that they're saying now is that this election has become a prototype of how they're going to go across the country, educating folks about their vote and why their vote matters. This is bigger than me. It's bigger than this parish, and it's bigger than this state now. This thing is nationwide, and I'm getting calls from all over the country. I've been in touch with Congressman Troy Carter, Cedric Richmond, those folks, former Senator Mary Landrieu. People are really paying attention to what's about to take place in Caddo Parish, Louisiana.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Sheriff Whitehorn is pressed for time, and we're trying to be respectful of that. I see one of our great friends here, Mr. Burton. I see you're here, sir, and it's great to see you. You have any questions or comments you'd like to share? You might be muted, Mr. Burton. Excuse me. If you can't hear me, well, listen. As we move the program forward, again, we have been very staunch about what's been taking place. We're happy to hear that the NAACP is stepping up, and I didn't address Mrs. Haver, but I will allow me to share with her very quickly. Is that I be very honest with you. I try to be careful not to step on any toes and not to quote push anybody. I was hoping quite honestly, that they would step up and that they would follow the proper protocol and that kind of thing. And I just feel very strongly that there needs to be more visibility and that kind of thing. I mean, this is not something that's a secret that you should tip around. Excuse me. And dare I say, I haven't had the pleasure of working with Mrs. Haver. I know how you are very strong in this area, and you know how we went at it, as not you and I personally, I'm talking about the NAACP in your state and in your town. So I just wanted to answer you specifically. I was trying to be, quote, a team player and not have anybody feel that I was coming in trying to tell them what to do or how to do or what they should do. So I just wanted to answer that for you.
Thank you, Brother President.
You're welcome.
Melvin,
Brother Whitehorn, I'm sorry, go right ahead, sir.
One other thing that I want to mention is the faith community has really stepped up. I'm visiting 6 to 8 churches every Sunday, and the ministers are really on board with their congregations. We haven't seen a movement like this since the Civil Rights Movement, where folks are really, really pulling together and making sure that our voices are heard here in Caddo Parish. And so I can't say enough about what I'm seeing as far as this grassroots effort to really step up and make sure. I believe that on March 23rd, we're going to win by thousands of votes because people are upset, people are motivated, and people realize that there was an injustice here in Caddo Parish.
Absolutely, and I'm believing the same thing with you. I'm claiming that as well as you mentioned the Christian/religious community. However, people sometimes people get a little sensitive about how that's addressed. So, yeah. But I just want to say to you very honestly is that we're with you with that. I see Mr. Burton has come back, and as I said to our audience earlier, is that we also have Dr. excuse me, Latienda Pierre with us, who's going to carry on the conversation here momentarily after Brother Whitehorn have to depart. And so we don't want you to get off, want you guys to stay on, but we do want to give anyone that's here now an opportunity to ask or share anything you'd like to share before Mr. Whitehorn have to depart. Okay, I don't see any hands going up. I don't hear any voices. So Mr. Whitehorn, again, we respect your time. We know that it was limited, but we do respect your time of taking the time to come on with us and to explain. And you're certainly getting a lot of hearts and thumbs going up and that kind of thing. And you did an excellent job explaining because there are no questions in the chat box. So we appreciate that so very much. And we appreciate you being here, sir.
Okay, thank you for having me. And I feel confident that Dr. Latienda Pierre will take charge and keep it moving.
Thank you so much, sir. And have a great evening.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Pierre, how are you, dear?
I'm doing good. How are you all doing?
Well, listen, we cannot complain. We're happy that you're here. We know that you're going to keep this thing rolling. And so I'm going to shut up and give you the floor.
Well, thank you so much. And I always refer Mr. Lars and everything. And so, I want to just start out by letting everybody get a little background about the actual sheriff's office. And one of the things I can say is that I do know a lot, particularly about this race and about this particular sheriff's office, because I was a deputy sheriff for 13 years with the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. In addition to that, I also did my dissertation on leadership practices and development in sheriffs. And so when we start to analyze this race, we have to look at the historical context of what actually a sheriff is, especially here in the state of Louisiana, because Louisiana has some of the most powerful sheriffs. When you look at what their duties and responsibilities are, we have some of the most powerful sheriffs in the whole entire United States. And so it is a big deal whenever there is a sheriff's election. So the overall sheriff position actually predates the president of the United States. The sheriff itself, or if you were to break it down, sheriff, it is from 9th century England. And so this is a position that came over in the New World. And so as we set up and our nation was forming, you had the presence of someone who was like the keeper of the land. And so that's what your sheriff actually starts and begins with. And so when we fast forward to understanding the context of the sheriff's office, it's kind of like a cross between your modern day forming of law enforcement and then also the old guard of kind of like an heir to the throne type of thing, which explains why in this situation between Mr. Whitehorn and Mr. Nicholson, we have such a difference in dynamics going on right now. Because while Mr. Whitehorn is carrying experience and all the things that align with what we are seeing now as a pattern of how we're electing sheriffs in the state of Louisiana, because actually out of the 64 sheriffs that are here in the state of Louisiana right now, there's only 3 sheriffs that come from non-law enforcement background. So this is a standard process that the state has actually been doing parish to parish, is electing law enforcement officers, people with law enforcement experience to lead, be the top law enforcement officer for the actual parish. And so what is being the dynamics of difference is Mr. Nicholson is actually being supported by the current sheriff, which is Sheriff Steve Prater. And so this is where the controversy starts to come in, because with Sheriff Prater, you have a outgoing sheriff who was in place for 24 years. He was first elected in 1999, and he enjoyed a rather combined coalition of Democrats, Republicans, Independents who actually voted for him. And every time that he was reelected, anyone that he went up against, that was one of his foundational campaign is he talked about experience. His experience when he went against an actual attorney himself, talking about Sheriff Prater, he actually brought out the fact that this attorney had no experience running a law enforcement organization like he did. And so now we're seeing these same dynamics of he's about to transition to the pardons board, and he's picking as his successor someone who totally goes against what he once upon a time said made him the top choice when he was running. And so this race has introduced some different dynamics that have drilled down into the core of how do we see this position and its importance, because there is a lot that a sheriff can do per our state constitution. And so whoever we put in this position will have a lot of influence, not just here in the parish when it comes to criminal justice reform, but they'll also have a lot of influence as well as in the state, particularly with our governor and any initiatives that the governor wants to do in relation to criminal justice reform. So it's a lot at stake with this particular sheriff's race. And any criminal justice based race, we do need to start paying more close attention to as well.
Wow, that is certainly an education for us, and you know, I am just really excited as I'm sitting here listening to you and hearing I told excuse me, Brother Whitehorn, that as far as I'm concerned, he's Sheriff Whitehorn, and listening to the things he's sharing and just seeing the hearts and the thumbs going up from my audience. And I did tell him, and I was very serious, that usually when they're not putting questions in the chat box, that means that they are really listening. And I say that very honestly, and I do appreciate them, but sometimes you know how people are, they'll put a question in the chat box that the person just gave you the answer to. But when I see that they actually listen, that does make a difference. And as we're educating ourselves, that certainly has happened. So as we are here, and we have several guests again with us physically on the site, and many of them that are watching, if we have any of our guests on the site that would like to share or ask a question, please feel free to do so. If you're muted, please unmute yourselves and tell us who you are and ask your question or share your comment, please.
Hey, Melvin, this is Charles Burton. Is my volume on?
Yes, sir, it is. And you're looking great. It is great to see you.
Well, I appreciate that. I got a lot of miles on this old body.
That's all right, sir.
Now, well, my support for Mr. Whitehorn is the fact that my pastor, who is Sam Carr, just made a comment, and a nonprofit organization like a church is not to promote a man. They can't do that. They can't recommend their people to vote for somebody. But my pastor said this. He said, "I know this man." And that was enough for me, because he's known him for years, but he knows his character. And I admire my pastor because I know he's a man of character. And Sam Carr would never let that man address our church unless he knows him as to be a man of integrity. So that's my only comment.
That is an excellent comment, and we appreciate that, because all of us know, Mr. Burton, whether we like it or not. We call ourselves Christians in our type, but everybody knows that the power of the tongue can be life or death. We know that's biblical. And when we have individuals such as yourself, who's an outstanding citizen, obviously outstanding humanitarian, former, I don't know if you're still pastoring or not, but I know you're a minister, you and your wife both, etc. When you stand up and when you share, then that says volumes, because we know how people can try to destroy us, regardless of race, creed, or color, simply because of maybe their own biases or their own dislike or whatever. So it's just great that you're sharing that. And so I just want to share that with you. And we are so happy that you're here.
That. Well, I learned some time ago that if you don't go along with the narrative, you become the target. And
Absolutely.
that is just that just boils within me. And so anyway, I support the sheriff. He had my last vote. I'm sure glad I made it. But I hope this is a better turnout for us, because he's got my support.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have other guests here. If you guys like to comment or share, please do. Just unmute yourselves. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
How you doing, Mr. Lawrence?
How are you, Brother Jones?
I'm pretty good. Great to be here, listening to the great commentary. Just echoing on some of Dr. Pierre's comments. It's definitely important to understand the candidates that are in this race and a fight that we fought for so long, specifically with him, getting past that first round and the second round and seeing the implications of, how the systemic racism has played a huge part in the results of this race. So some of the things that Dr. Pierre was speaking about with getting out to vote and actually knowing the candidates personally from a professional standpoint and just from a process and organizational structure standpoint is important. By Sheriff Whitehorn being in this race, he's essentially one of the most qualified individuals across the United States of America to serve in that position. He has the law enforcement background. He has the background professionally as well. Has managed millions and millions of dollars worth of budgets. So we absolutely need to be made more aware as time trickles down. So I just want to encourage you all, encourage you specifically, Mr. Lawrence, to keep operations and podcasts like this going.
Well, listen, I do appreciate that, because I believe in just laying it out there and sharing it like it is. And I'm so happy that you came on to share that. And I can say personally, I haven't had the opportunity to work with Dr. Pierre and had the opportunity and still work with Mr. Burton, et cetera. They can tell you, you know, sometimes I may be a little forward, but one thing I'm not going to be is I'm not going to be phony, and I'm going to just share it from the educational background that I get from people, et cetera. And that's why, just as you've said, and as Mr. Burton has said, and Dr. Pierre has said, you know, I with Sheriff Whitehorn, and I told him earlier, I'm going to call him Sheriff Whitehorn, you know, is that I say, man, this brother here is phenomenal. You know, all the things that he's done, and people are questioning whether or not he should be the sheriff, and he's having to go to a runoff and talk about win by a slim vote. And, you know, and as I said, people know I'll just speak my piece. And I'm saying, wait a minute. And all of you guys have already said it. You have a person with no experience. You have a person with all this experience that have done all of these things. And my question always comes back to, and I'll be very honest, okay, so what could the problem be? Right. If we all talk about professionalism, if we all talk about having the proper credentials and that kind of thing, I honestly say, because I work very hard within myself to make sure that I'm being fair, and I'm not just saying, oh, it's because I'm Black. I'm very serious with you guys about that. I do. I look at that very hard, because I want to be sure that I'm being honest with me. And I can't be honest with you if I'm not honest with me. So as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to each and every one of you, and I'm listening to Sheriff Whitehorn, and I hope the individuals that I know that don't have the same melanation that I have. As a matter of fact, I've said to Mr. Burton and others is that I call my friends and associates and people I know, I'll call them my less melanated brothers. I really don't identify people as Black and white and that kind of thing, although we know that we all see color, we see hair, we see eyes and stuff like that. But I do that for a reason, because melanation many times determines, and now you guys know this, the first thing that we see of an individual is that if they have melanation, we know if they less. So I'm saying all that to say is that I appreciate you guys for being here and saying what you are saying, because we need to stop pretending that we do not see the two Americas. We need to stop pretending that we do not see people making decisions solely because of the melanation of a person's skin, and then try to, and Mr. Burton said it perfectly, then you become the target when you have the expertise, when you have the knowledge, but you don't dare say that, because then it's like, oh, well, you're not being fair, and that's this and that's the third. But when you look at, and you guys know this better than me, because you've known this gentleman longer than I, when you look at the credentials and all the things that he's done, and we're talking about 40 years of experience, I mean, what is the conversation? There should never have been a runoff.
Right.
What is the conversation?
Yeah, that becomes the issue at hand from different people that I've had conversations with that are supporting the other candidate. Once we get past the credentials, it becomes an unfortunate reality to watch people trip themselves up trying to explain the unexplainable. And dialogue is necessary. It's needed. That is how we measure our advancement and our progression as a society. Our ability to have dialogue, even when we might disagree on something. However, at the end of the day, for most those who I've had exchanges with and had dialogue with, when we get out of trying to say, okay, we had the prior, the current the current sheriff until March the 1st. Sheriff Steve Prater is the sheriff. When we look at the fact that if we take his resume, okay, because on a job, when you're looking to see who you're going to hire next to take the place of someone who's leaving, you're always looking at that current person and the criteria they set as your guide for who comes next. And the question that I always trip up those who are on the opposite end with is, how come for the last 24 years, we as Caddo Parish citizens have elected a man with law enforcement experience to be our top officer of the parish? That has been the standard we, the voters, set, because again, at the end of the day, every elected official works for us. Okay, we don't work for them. All right, so the whole entire notion, well, I'm going to vote for him because so and so picked him, that is not how we do it. Okay, this person is applying for a job. Okay, we had six individuals who submitted their resume. They got out on the campaign trail. We had 2 that went in the runoff. Okay, now we got to look at them more closely and make sure we understand these things. So, okay, just because he receives an endorsement from the current sheriff, we still have to look at, does he align with what this current sheriff is? And like I've also expressed to people, and other people have expressed the same thing too, when you sit in that sheriff's seat, there is no FTO program. And in law enforcement, FTO is field training officer program. Okay, every new officer goes through an FTO program. I was an FTO myself. Okay, so I trained other deputies, and I know that it's a process in hand. But when you sit that high up, you will not have people that will be able to train you. You have to have developed some muscle memory. That muscle memory comes from actually having career experience, lived experiences of doing different things. What do you do when you get that officer involved shooting call the first time, and it might be 2 o'clock in the morning because you have a shift and you have to decide, do I get out this bed and go see about my officer who might be down? These are things that are going to come up that if you have never in your days of your life ever walked in that position, you are going to struggle with the muscle memory on how to act, how to behave, or when the first time you have to go to one of those scenes of those crimes, you have to see those type of things, because there's a lot of things that the sheriff does that is rooted in law enforcement. I've seen it firsthand myself. So you have to have someone who has already, especially when you talk about that high up, that comes in with a muscle memory, that they understand how to operate whenever these situations kick in and they don't have anybody around them to help give them a play-by-play of this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do. And so you're looking at a cadre of issues that can form by putting someone in that after 24 years, we went with a law enforcement experienced person, and then now we're going to revert back and we're going to go in a different direction. Okay, that's not where we going. The voting pattern doesn't dictate. The state doesn't dictate that. In fact, that is not the standard anymore. Most sheriff's office are ran by people with law enforcement background because of the nature of what's happening.
Okay, excellent. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want to keep you here all night. Anyone else have any comments or closing comments you'd like to share with us? And we will be happy to listen.
I'd just like to say, Brother Lars, I think this is something that they mentioned, the faith community.
Yes.
The faith community plays a large part of what goes on in our communities. And I'm not promoting someone to vote for this person or that person, but it needs to be talked about. Regardless of how many people are getting out to vote or whatever the case might be, people need encouragement. And I thank you for your podcast here to help get the word out. I think everyone that spoke tonight had something positive to say, but I believe that it's going to be a situation where the community needs to be educated as to what's going on. And I have much respect for Dr. Pierre and what she said about just putting someone in office that has not had that training, has not been there before. There are people out there that are willing to just do that. They're willing to do that. So I believe that more talk on the situation, encouragement, and so on and so forth. And I'd like to thank you for what you're doing here. And I know some of the things that working with you and part of your team in the past. I've seen you go to all the way to the state and talk to legislation to get some things done for people that were marginalized. And that happens all over the country, all over the country. And I know what you're capable of. I'm just wondering, at this point, I guess you haven't got there as yet, but I think your community needs to know some of the things that you've done and some of the trailblazers that have come your way and made some things happen within their lives, within the community. And I thank you for inviting me, and I'm going to pray about this, but I think we need to do a little more to help this situation along. Once
I agree.
again,
Listen,
thank you.
I think, no, listen, I thank you because, again, and I'm trying to say this gingerly, Miss Haver. What's the quote about a prophet is not respected in his own home or whatever?
Oh,
People
yes.
don't receive you when they feel that you think that just because you've been somewhere else, you think you this and you think you that, and that's not the case at all. It's just the fact that when you are the person that you are and you do what you do, and you just happen to do it wherever you are, and then you return home, it doesn't mean that you stop doing that.
Mhm.
So I just have to answer you very succinctly with that. I've just been very careful not to step on any toes or try to make people feel as though I don't respect their professionalism or think that they're less than, because I've been other places and done other things. So I just want to share with you, and as you share with some of our people, that I do appreciate that, and I am always available to help and to assist, and that really is where my head is to assist and to help, because I certainly do not want people to sit down and stop doing what they're doing because, they may feel unappreciated or they may feel intimidated or whatever. So that's just what we all need to do. And I appreciate you for being here, quite honestly, and all of our members that are here. And Dr. Pierre, Ms. Haver, she is a go-getter. Let me tell you,
I can see that.
She's a go-getter.
That's right.
She takes no prisoners. You guys will get along great because she reminds me of you. She's a go-getter. And Mr. Burton and I have known each other for a while. And matter of fact, we actually met, if I can say this quickly, because we both are authors, and he has a book called "Not Me, It's a Trap." And please allow me to say, I have to say this, Mr. Burton, and because of the work that he does and the ministry that he does, and so many of our young people get caught up in substance abuse and that kind of thing, and he was so moved until he decided to put together his characters and do a book and that kind of thing, and it's just a phenomenal book. And those are the kind of people, if I might say, very honestly to everyone on this telephone, on this podcast, is that I was always taught as a child, is to surround yourself with people that's trying to go somewhere and do something. It's not about looking down your nose at anyone or thinking that you're better than anybody. It has nothing to do with that. It's just being able to contribute positively and keep it rolling. So that is what we're going to continue to do until the good Lord calls our number. And then once he does that, there's nothing else we can do. So
Amen.
Again, we want to appreciate everyone for being here. And we certainly want to encourage you to go out and to vote. And we certainly want to encourage you to encourage others to vote. And dare I say, I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization or church, and Mr. Burton is absolutely right, but I'm not a pastor of any church. So I can say I'm certainly going to vote for Sheriff Henry Whitehorn and everybody that I know and everybody that I'm close to. We're going to encourage to do that, because the bottom line is we preach to our children, be the best and do the best and stand up and be counted. That's all. That's all. And that's what we profess. That's what we're going to work to do. No one said anything about perfection. No one said anything about making mistakes, or no one said anything about that. And we try to trip people up with that. Is that, well, you know, I know back in 1929, I knew it. Nobody's talking about that. We are talking about the fact is that we are growing and we are moving forward, and we're trying to get everyone to be the best that they can be. And with that, I'm shutting up.
Yeah. Hey, Melvin, where do we get yard signs?
Great question. Dr. Pierre Mike can answer that for us.
Yes, you can actually get Whitehorn. If you go to the website whitehornforsheriff.com, you can actually put in a request to get your yard signs, and I'll actually pass along to also that some yard signs are being needed.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, guys, this has been great. This has been the Nobody Asked Me Guy Show. I'm your host, Melvin Casey Lars, and we do encourage you guys to come and join us some Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. We have all kind of guests, and we talk about all kind of topics. And if time permits, if you will go to your YouTube and look up the Nobody Asked Me Guy Show and subscribe to our show, we certainly appreciate it. And I'm going to publicly say I'm in a fight right now with YouTube because it's not showing all of my subscribers, and they keep saying they don't know what the problem is. So don't be discouraged if you go and you see 100. I think it's only showing 101, and we have actually 100 times that many, because we have over 1,000 subscribers. But for some reason, they talking about the algorithms and all of that. So don't be discouraged. And thank you, audience. You guys are always here with me. You always support me, and I appreciate you. So again, I'm Melvin Casey Lars, host of the Nobody Asked Me Guy Show. And we appreciate each and every one of you guys, and want to bid you guys a great night.
Good night. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys were here. And I'm going to make sure we edit it, and we're going to put the topic and all of that stuff on it. Then it's going to be relaunched on Facebook and LinkedIn and all those outlets.
Okay.
And I'm sure that'll happen within the next 24 hours. Okay, so have a good night, guys.
All right, you too.
All right.